Welcome back, everybody, to Virtual LeaderCon Wednesday, day 3. We are sort of on this, we're on the back half now, just about past the back half. Some of you don't know what I'm saying because you're here on a social channel. You're on LinkedIn, you're here on YouTube, you're here on Facebook. We are so glad that you're here. And you're joining in the smack dab in the middle of a 5-day long event called Virtual LeaderCon, and you're getting simulcast opportunity to join us. And I picked this lovely lady to join us for that specific purpose. Her in a second. So if you're here on another social channel, we hope that you will engage. We got someone on the team that's watching those chats, and we'll be able to share that information. I'll know what you're asking or what you're saying. The other thing is we hope that you'll say, this is so good, I want some more. It's all for free. Go to virtualleadercon.com and register. We'd love to have you join us for the rest of the event. Now, I just told my team downstairs they got kind of freaked out because I'm kind of hungry. Earlier this morning, Mary, I asked everybody to tell me their favorite candy, and because we're being grateful. And so I have to tell all of you a story. So earlier this year, this big box arrived in my office. It was a big white box, and it said on it, Licorice International. And I didn't know where it came from. I didn't know what it was. I opened this box, and this whole box, it's like 7 pounds of all this different black licorice from around the world. I had no idea where it came from. There's nothing inside. It just says black licorice and it's all this stuff. And I love black licorice. This is fantastic. Like, this is unbelievably cool, but I have no idea where it came from. So I tried to figure it out. I couldn't figure it out. I had no idea. And so I was asking, trying to figure stuff out. And so finally, 2 or 3 days later, we had a team call, and I said, I got this licorice. Did someone send it to me? Like, what? And Marissa said, I know. I think I know. Because Mary Abbajay sent me a note and said, I want to send, what can I send Kevin? And Marissa said black licorice. So I got all this different kinds of black licorice. And Aiden, this is Haribo. This is from England. This is one of the many bags that I haven't yet opened. I've been saving this bag for this moment right here.
That is so sweet. Yeah, I stalked your staff. I wanted to send Kevin a thank you gift because he's always doing lovely things for me, recommending me and referring me. So I stalked Marissa and his team, and I was like, Marissa, what can I send him? What kind of booze does he like? What is he? She's like, oh no, black licorice. So I sent you some black licorice, which I just never knew there were so many different kinds of black licorice.
It is unbelievable. We tried, we couldn't figure it out. So finally I figured it out. Thanks to Marissa. I didn't figure it out. Marissa told me. And I saved this one bag. I've got bags that I saved, like, okay, that's a 5-star. Got to get some more of that. Like, from literally everybody from around the world. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And,
what country was your favorite licorice from? Do you remember?
I don't know. I don't remember the country. Tire Tracks. I think it might be from the Netherlands. The black licorice Tire Tracks, one of the best. But the very first one I had was a black licorice caramel. Is there anybody here? No one this morning said that they love black licorice. No one picked it. Because I would tell you, if anyone would have said black licorice this morning, you would have gotten a special prize. But no one said it as their favorite candy. So thank you all for being here. And now I just realized I'm eating black licorice, and who knows what that's going to do to my teeth. I didn't plan that out. Let me introduce you to Mary Abbajay. She is one of my favorite people that I've never physically met. We're going to fix that someday. Go Netherlands. Oh, hello, Mr. Alway. Mary Abbajay is an award-winning author of the best-selling book, Managing Up, How to Move Up, Win at Work, and Succeed with Any Type of Boss. And I have 5 copies, all signed. So guess what that means? Some of y'all, Lisa says is my favorite. Sure it is. Now it is, right? Okay, Lisa, you get a book. You get a copy of Managing Up by Mary Abbajay because you said it. Even if you lied, you got it because you were the first one to say it. She is the president of Mary is the president of Cornerstone Group, a full-service organizational leadership development consultancy that delivers leading-edge talent and organizational development solutions to business and government. She's a sought-after speaker, author, consultant, trainer. She helps clients develop strategies and skills and sensibilities needed for success in the 21st century. She is one of my favorite people. This book is fantastic. I'm so glad that she's here. And she's being completely honest. Lisa is being completely honest. So Kate says, managing up is one of the most challenging things I do, in my opinion. So we're going to help you unpack that. But specifically, I asked Mary to pick a topic. She said, we're going to talk about dealing with difficult bosses and how not to be one. And so what that means is there's two things going on here, right? There's the dealing with the difficult boss and then making sure we're not one. So we're going to talk a little bit about both of those things. So, okay, difficult bosses. What are the biggest difficulties that you hear most often?
Well, when we talk about difficult bosses, let's give people context for it. So difficult bosses are bosses that you're going to find difficult to work for. That may, like your nightmare boss, Kevin, might be my dream boss, right? So the first thing we have to realize, and my dream boss might be your nightmare. So the first thing we have to realize is whether or not that boss is truly difficult, like a difficult boss, or just difficult for us. And a difficult boss is any boss with whom we have challenge working with whom we find challenging to deal with and navigate. And of course, everybody knows that managing up is about managing the relationship, right? It's about managing that relationship so it can be productive and positive for you, your boss, and the organization. So a difficult boss might be a person that is a micromanager. A difficult boss might be a person that is a ghost boss or a seagull boss, the kind that swoop and poop and then swoop away again. It could be incompetent. It could be inexperienced. A difficult boss, there are so many. It's going to be any boss that you have difficulty working alongside with. And the thing about difficult bosses is, I know you know this, Kevin, is that they're everywhere. Something like 75% of Americans say that their boss is the worst part of their day. And I just read a stat this afternoon at lunch that said, we know that bad bosses are one of the reasons why people leave organizations. It's a $1 trillion turnover problem in America last year. $1 trillion organizations spend having to re-recruit people after they quit because their boss, well, quite frankly, sucks. So yeah, it's a huge problem.
So I often will say to people that, they made a movie called Horrible Bosses, and it was so popular, they made a second one because it was believable. Even though the movie might not have been believable. No comments. No comments from the VLC team about. I don't know what that means. This is real. But you said something at the very start that I think we have to recognize, and that is that my horrible boss, my difficult boss, might not be yours, which gets at an issue of our own awareness, which we can get to in a second. But the other thing that says is, Angie is sucking up. My boss is not the worst part of my day. Waking up is the worst part of my day. Angie and I do not work on the same body clock. We'll just leave it at that. The thing here is that I think that's so very important to recognize that we might not realize we are, because I've never gotten that feedback before. For the other 5 people, I wasn't, but for this person, I am. So we'll get to us in a minute, but let's talk about us when we're wearing our contributor hat, not our leader hat. What do we need to do if we want to deal with them?
Yeah. So a couple of things. So I think who is it that said their boss drives them crazy? Who makes slow decisions? Is that Cindy? Oh, no, someone said that in there. And that's a great example. So for who said that? I just saw that. Oh, Kate Anderson says, I have trouble with bosses that have a hard time making timely decisions. And you know what? That would drive me crazy too. So the first thing you need to do when you're facing a difficult boss is to really kind of diagnose the situation. What is it in particular you find difficult? What are the behaviors that you are having that challenge you? What are the behaviors you need to navigate? And then you're going to have to do a little sort of internal sort of self-assessment. Why does this bother me? Blah, blah, blah. Like, get yourself recentered. What you don't want to do when you're dealing with a difficult boss is you don't want to react out of emotion, right? You don't want to react out of agitation or frustration or anger. So you've got to really kind of process your emotional state, get to a place where you can be calm and neutral, right? You don't want to be hijacked by your amygdala or your reptile brain, and to start thinking about what could be driving this behavior in them. What are their needs? What needs are they trying to resolve on their part? And what is it that I could do a little more of, a little less of, a little differently? And depending on what the difficult behavior is, will determine what your strategy is. The dealing with a micromanager is going to look very different than dealing with a ghost boss, or dealing with a workaholic boss is going to be a much different strategy than dealing with your ghost boss or your impulsive boss. So it's about kind of figuring out what those behaviors are and then finding strategies to actually navigate those behaviors. The thing about the difficult bosses is you probably aren't going to change them. The goal here is to try to figure out a way to navigate and work well with them. And you can actually create pretty good relationships with difficult bosses as long as you know how to A, not get hooked by their behavior, and B, kind of guide that behavior or work around that behavior in a way that works for you, for them, and the organization. And you learn a ton. Like when I have to work for a micromanager, and some of my clients are, I always learn a ton about how to navigate that personality type.
So let me just make this comment to those of you that have been around for some larger session, part of this overall session. Did you hear it? It's not about the difficult boss. It's about us. What do we need to do? What do we need to do to understand them? What do we need to do a little more of, a little less of? It comes back to us. And so one of the reasons I love Mary and I love this work is it's not about blaming, oh my gosh, isn't it awful? I got this difficult boss. Yeah, we can have a little fun talking about that. The fact that, oh my gosh, we got all these different names for them, the ghost and all that stuff. But ultimately, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Right? What am I going to do?
That's right. That's right. And, that's where your power lies. And whenever you're dealing with a difficult boss, a difficult colleague, a difficult person, you've got a couple choices. You could either just accept their behavior because that's what it is and just go with it without rancor. You can adapt your behavior so you can do something to change the dynamics between you, or you can leave. And that's also, I saw a couple people in the chat box talk about leaving. Sometimes, you have to know when to quit and when to grit, right? There are times when you should grit and try different strategies and make that relationship with that difficult boss work. And then there's some times where you just might be better off finding yourself a different opportunity, another place where you can really be valued and where your boss will find you valuable. So it's always an option to leave, to accept, to grit, or to quit.
Accept, adapt, and grit, or quit.
Yeah.
And what did, for those of you that have been here since first thing this morning, what was the message of the morning? Use wisely your power of choice. Yes. That's where we started our morning. Use wisely our power of choice. That was our morning inspiration.
Right? I love that. And that's so true. And that was the whole reason behind this book, was to get people, instead of being career victims, where we are powerless, where we just point fingers and blame, to turn people into career victors, so to give them some tools and some frameworks to navigate these difficult situations. Because you and I both know there's a lot of difficult bosses out there. Organizations still promote people based on their technical skills. Michael Scott, you're a great salesperson. Congratulations, you're head of Dunder Mifflin. Oh, you're great with numbers. Your spreadsheets are beautiful. You're the chief financial officer. So we promote people based on their technical skills without necessarily any knowledge of their aptitude or their acumen for managing people. And then, of course, most organizations don't train leaders how to be managers anyway. So then it's a confluence of events that just means we're going to have some bosses who are not very good at being bosses. There you go.
Just saying, everybody. Just saying. And does anyone really think that Michael Scott was even a very good salesperson to start with? I know that was the premise of the show, but
that was the premise, yeah.
I highly doubt. I actually highly doubt that. So there's all sorts of great stuff showing up. And as I absolutely remember from last year, you were one of the most popular guests last year. Not a surprise to me. And I remember that there were tons and tons of questions. And so I'm going to open this box. I've not looked at any of them, Mary. Here we go.
All right.
How are all these bosses getting into management positions? Bob just asked. You've answered a little bit. Bob, you get a book for Bob. Bob Fitzgerald, you get a copy of the book. You've got to send an email. It's going to show up in there what you need to do. Email your mailing address to info@virtualleadercon.com.
Yeah, so that's how they get in there. And then the question is, they stay because for a couple of reasons. One is organizations don't then hold people accountable for the right part of management. They hold people accountable for, the number of widgets you produced or that. But they don't hold managers accountable for employee engagement or employee happiness. They also let them stay because they replacing a manager is even more expensive than replacing an employee. So it's a mixture of accountability and the upper management being reluctant to say they made a mistake and being reluctant to reinvest into finding a new manager.
That's really excellent. So there's another question here, and you identify in the book, you have a whole bunch of different types of difficult bosses or different kinds of bosses. You've said several of them: the ghost, the workaholic, the seagull, and all that sort of stuff. But some of them is asking the question specifically: can you explain more about the micromanager boss? So we're gonna bring Coach Mary to the rescue. If you have the micromanager boss, Coach Mary, what do they do?
All right, couple things. Number one, don't take it personally. It's probably not about you. That micromanager boss probably has what we call a higher need for certainty. It's a neuropsychological need that humans have. And their higher need for certainty is going to be rubbing up against your neuropsychological need for autonomy. So when they have a higher need for certainty, that means they're going to need much more information, much more inclusion, and much more control, a sense of control in order for them to build the trust in you. Now, if you are the only person on the team who is being micromanaged, then I suggest you take it very personally because it is about you. There is something you are not doing. There is something you are not giving them or sharing with them that's making them hold those reins tighter. So, couple of key things for the micromanager. First of all, you are going to have to flood them with communication. You're going to over communicate. You're going to proactively give them status reports, give them updates, let them know where things are. If your micromanager boss is reaching out to you for an update, you're already falling behind in their mind. All right, so you're going to over communicate. And by the way, you're going to hate every second of it, and it's not right and it's not fair, but the truth is, until they get their need for certainty met, you're going to have to over function for them. Find out ahead of time what they really care about. Find out ahead of time if they have any particular peccadillos or they have any particular wants or needs in this project, especially if they're a nitpicking micromanager. Find out what font they like. Are they Oxford comma people or not Oxford comma people? Are there particular color schemes they want in the project? Whatever it is, find out right early on how they want that project done. And then be proactive and just give them information, inclusion, and control. Most of the time, once that micromanager has that high level of certainty that you are going to get the job done the way they want to get it done, they should let go of the reins and give you more autonomy. And it's, by the way, again, you're going to hate it. It's not fair. It's not right, but that is who they are. They have a higher need for certainty.
Someone in your life has told you this. Maybe it was your parents. Life isn't always fair. It just is, right? Barb asks the question, how do you manage up with the boss that feels threatened by your skills and creates a toxic environment for you?
So that's a big question in there. So one of the things that happens is, first of all, you have to really interrogate that story. Is your boss really threatened by your skills or not? That can be a hard one. That can be a hard one to kind of pull apart. Or
it might be in your head.
It might be in your head. Or your style just might be abrasive to that boss's style. And of course, your boss may be very threatened by your success. I recently talked with a woman who was like, my boss, I work so fast. My boss is so slow. He's all threatened by my success. He keeps telling me to slow down. I'm like, well, we know you work too fast for him. Like, that's clear. But we don't know necessarily that he's threatened by your success. So a couple of things. Try to figure out what is it about the way you are operating and the way that your boss is operating that's in conflict, that's in friction. And try to see if you can resolve it there. Now, that being said, there are a lot of bosses who may be threatened by your success and your accomplishments. And if that is the case, what I'm going to tell you, you may not like, But it's going to be this: find a new boss, because your boss has a lot of influence over your career trajectory and your success in that organization. And if you're working for someone who truly is tamping you down, then I suggest you need to find someone who's going to rise you up. You could also go have a conversation with this boss and say, here's where I want to go with my career. What are some things I could do more of, less of, differently to get in that direction? So you could bring this boss on as an ally. So those would be my 3 suggestions for dealing with that kind of a boss.
Oh my gosh, there's like 12 questions in here, Mary. I'm searching through here just a little bit to see if I can get some semblance of flow. Everybody, it's not please don't take it personally, anybody. Is it really true that you can't influence, help change their behavior?
So you can't control their behavior. Because we wish we could. I wish I could control everybody, but we can influence their behavior. Because I know there's a lot of people wish that.
This is how she influences me. Everybody, she sends me black licorice.
That. I know people wish they could make me stop talking so fast, and that ain't ever going to happen. But no, I do believe you can influence people's behavior because other people do live in our circle of influence. So, and we can influence behavior by a couple of things. One, how we treat them, right? When we treat people so that they feel valued, they feel heard, respected, then their behavior to us may change. It's called the platinum rule, right? Treat others as they want to be treated, not as you want to be treated, as they want to be treated. And that brings people closer to you. And when people come closer to you, they're more apt to also be on the lookout for what works for you. So yes, how we treat other people, how we interact with other people can influence them. The other way we can influence people's behavior is simply by either giving feedback or making requests. Now, not all bosses are amazing like Kevin Eikenberry and are open to feedback from their staff, but some bosses are. So if you have a boss who isn't open to feedback, then learn how to make an effective request for how you want to be engaged with or what you need from them. And as always, an effective upwards request is all about what it is specifically you need, why you need it, what it looks like, the benefit to them.
Well, it's not right there because that's critical.
Critical.
Right there.
And what you're going to do to make it happen. So that's what an effective request is, I would say. I'm probably missing 1 or 2 things in there.
Wow, that's pretty good. You got to get that why in there. So I'm trying to listen to you, trying to watch this amazing chat over here. Jody, I have a question for you, Jody. You got to give me a yes or no answer. Jody is saying, slow down, ask more questions. And then here's what she says at the end. Managing up is part of the job.
Yes. Jody, girl, that is 100% correct. It is part of the job, a very important part of the job.
And so the question for you, Jody, is I need a yes or no, simply a yes or no. Do you already have a copy of this book or not? Signed. Just saying. I need to know because I gave something to Jody yesterday and she sends it. Well, I already have that. I know you already had it. We've solved that problem. Check your email, Jody. But I need to know. You just need me a yes or no simply because you earned it. People are giving her credit, but she has not said. Some people call it boss management. It's a good way to think about it. Okay. So while we're waiting on Jody, we're all waiting.
I think she said no. It looks like she said no.
Well, she said no. Jody, you get a copy. You know how to do it. So there you go. Let me see if I can find another great question for you. In contrast to the micromanager, the ghost manager. Does that mean I'm terrific?
Yes. So my team calls me the introverted workaholic ghost boss. So a ghost boss. So the first thing you have to realize when you have well, first of all, let's talk about what a ghost boss is. A ghost boss is someone who just like tosses you a project and then poof, they're gone. They've disappeared. They're off in the ethernet. You can't find them. They don't give you any information. They don't check in with you. You're kind of off there in outer space all by yourself. So, and people ghost for a lot of reasons. This is one of those differences between intent and impact. So people may ghost you because, quite frankly, they're too busy and they have too much on their plate. They might want to be more involved with you, but they don't have the bandwidth. People may also ghost you because they might be really extreme introverts, and it might be painful for them to be engaging with you. Number 3, people might ghost because they are the opposite of a micro. They're a macro manager. They don't want to be hands-on. They hired you because they trust you. They figure if you need me, you'll come find me, but do your job. And then sometimes, of course, you'll have a ghost boss who is RIP, retired in place, right? That just is ghosting you, and they're ghosting everyone. So those are some reasons why people might be a ghost. And I think it's important to understand for all these behaviors, there are a multitude of reasons why people do them. And most of them probably have nothing to do with you. They're probably not because they're trying to make your life miserable or they're trying to hate you. It's just it's who they are, what they do, how they operate. So
you just said something really important when you said there may be a difference between the intent and the impact. Yeah. And that's incredibly important. And I hope that you all are noticing the theme that Mary just mentioned as well. And that is focus on them. And here's the thing. Mary just gives you like 17 reasons or 12 reasons or whatever that it could be that the person is ghosting you, or that could be the reason the person is micromanaging you or whatever. We may not even need to know which one it is. We just need to know that it's very likely more than or different than what we think it might be. And the first one is it's not about us. And then it's, I don't know what it is. It could be any of these things. I might want to try to figure that out, or at least, what do I do now given that, right? It goes back to diagnosing the situation, as Renee said.
I love it.
I love it. Renee, you get a book.
Yay!
Renee gets a book.
Yay!
There you go.
All right, so here's.
You also like your joke about RIP, so that's probably another good reason why Renee
retired in place. All right, so here's this. This one's gonna have a couple of fun acronyms in it too. So if you have a ghost boss, a couple of ideas that things that you can start and you can try. Number 1 is, again, you're gonna have to be proactive about reaching out to them to get what you need. So that means being very specific about what you need, scheduling meetings to get the critical feedback that you need from them or on projects. It's also going to mean being very prepared and succinct when you meet with a ghost boss. So if you only need 10 minutes, get in there at that 10 minutes and get out. Part of what you want to be able to do with the ghost boss is kind of train them that when you need their time, that you're going to be very what's the word I'm looking for? Very economical with it. You're not going to just take a bunch of time. You're going to be in and out. You're going to want to really embrace the term FITFO. And FITFO is an acronym from the Army, which stands for figure it the F word out, which means really going ahead and taking on is figuring out how to get the information that you need as much as possible, reaching out to colleagues, talking to other people in your organization, doing your own research. It might be also having other senior people in your organization serve as mentors for you, because your ghost boss probably doesn't have the bandwidth to do it. So you want to do a little FITFO. And honestly, a ghost boss could be a really great opportunity to really like stretch your wings and fly in an organization. And then the other acronym I want you to do is called CYA. And we all know what that stands for. Cover your behind. And that's as important because, to be honest, you don't want to get burned by moving out too far ahead of a ghost boss. So let's say, for example, Kevin, let's say you're my ghost boss and I've got to submit a project, something or other on a certain day. So I might say, hey, Kevin, just to let you know, this is due to the client Wednesday at 5. I've attached it here. Let me know if you have any concerns, questions, additions, or edits by 4:30 on Wednesday. Thank you, Mary. So now I have a little bit of an email trail in case my ghost boss tries to say, you never told me you were doing that. So a little CYA can be really helpful with a ghost boss. Couple of ideas.
On the other hand, if we're all emailing, right? If we're all sending all those CYA emails, we got another bigger problem in the organization.
Yeah.
And let me just say this to everybody. I know we could stay here for 3 hours and I could just keep asking the questions you all are asking. And yet I think it's important that we don't just think up, right? There's 2 parts to this topic, to this title given to us by Coach Mary, dealing with difficult bosses and how not to be one. It in our best interest as leaders to only think about me looking up and woe is me. How do I deal with my boss up? How do we make sure we're not one? So I want to take the last few minutes there, because right where you started, Mary, was you could do the same thing with different people and have it show up differently. One person thinks you're ghosting them, the other person thinks you're micromanaging them. Like, wow. Right? I mean, you didn't say quite that, but you definitely said that the other person's deciding. It's not. You've been telling us that when we're on the other side of it, it's not just about them. That's true. But for us as a leader, we have to recognize that whatever we're doing could be being seen. The impact could be different for different people. So what do we need to do? Self-awareness time. How do we get a better sense of all this?
Great. So I'm going to give you a couple of practical things that I think managers need to do to not be difficult bosses. One is you have to have, as you said, the self-awareness. What are your preferences? What are your priorities? What are your pet peeves? Like, really get really clear on your operating system, your SOP, if you will. Create like an SOP of me so that and be honest about it. Be honest about what you really need. And then you're going to want to make sure you have a conversation with your team. And this is a two-way conversation. And I want you to really articulate to your team with as much transparency and honesty who you are, what you care about, and how you operate. Make sure you really articulate your preferences, your pet peeves around communication, collaboration, your expectations. Make sure you tell them what they are. You've got to help your team manage up to you. Don't make it a guessing game for them. Be really clear with them about who you are and what you expect. Then I want you to find out what's important to your team as individuals and as a group. And so you're going to ask them, what are your preferences? What are your priorities? What are your pet peeves? How do you like to communicate? How do you like to collaborate? And you're going to have a conversation, because I want the managers to also embrace the platinum rule, right? So I want you as a manager to learn to see your people as unique individuals. And you guess what? You get to negotiate the gaps. So for example, on my team, I am there's only two of us who are introverts, and the rest of my team are all extroverts. So you can imagine on my team meetings, I'm literally going, all right, let's just get to the point. Let's just get to the point. Let's just get to the point. So what we do is we start the team meetings and we negotiate how much chit chat we're going to have. We negotiate. Should we have 5 minutes of chit chat? 7 minutes of chit chat? And so sometimes I'll be like, fine, as much as you guys want. And sometimes they'll be like, okay, Mary, we get it. You're stressed out. You want no chit chat. So negotiate, make it a partnership. That's number two. Number three is basically be a human being. Be kind, right, Kevin? Like, lead with passion, with compassion, with a little bit of love, with empathy. When you engage your employees, when you show that you care about them, and you do actually care about them, they will be much more engaged. They'll be much more productive. They'll be much more positive. So those are the three big things I would say. Oh, and the last one, of course, is seek feedback. Find out how people really are experiencing you. And you want to make sure that you're asking people who are going to be honest with you. And yes, you might get some different feedback from different people, but that's okay. At least you'll know how Kevin experiences you, how Wayne experiences you, how Nancy experiences you. And then you as a leader get to decide how you want to adjust your interactions with that person so that you have a better impact with them. Like, yeah. I know for me, I'm a very direct person. And I know one of my team members kind of shrivels when I'm too direct. So I'll soften it up a little bit so that she can hear. And another one of my team members just likes it quick and dirty and direct. So I try to adapt to that.
So I think you said 4 things. Feedback was number 4. Rob wants to know what number 3 was.
Number 1 was know yourself, right? Number 2 was articulate who you are to your team. Number 3 was find out who your team is by really doing that. Number 4 was feedback. Is that what I did?
I believe that's right.
Yeah. Oh, I have one more.
3 was maybe 3 was being a human. Maybe 4 was being a human, but we got them all now.
We got them all.
So, okay. So I got to make a couple of comments. There's something happening here in the chat. There's a couple of things that are happening, Mary, that you need to know about. Number 1 is people are saying we need a double session. She needs to come back again next year, which means people are already assuming we're doing this next year.
Wow.
Probably a decent assumption, but there's not a foregone conclusion necessarily. But The second thing is that we took like 3 sessions from last year and made them reopen them, made them re-available, sort of pulled them out of the vault, if you will, from last year. And Mary's was one of them. So that's been put in the chat. So you can go back and watch Mary last year. But Mary, there's a way that they can get Mary every week on LinkedIn, right? On live. Can you tell them that real quick?
Yeah, so I've been doing LinkedIn Lives for 15 minutes every Friday. We usually go on at noon, but I'm thinking of changing to 1 o'clock Eastern time because I think, Kevin, you're on at noon. I didn't want to go up against you. What time are your LinkedIn Lives?
Well, lately we've been doing a series of Fridays at noon, but after this Friday at noon, when Guy Harris will be with me doing doing simulcast from here, I don't know that we'll stay on Friday. We did a specific series, but yeah. So I didn't mean to step on you. That's just what we.
No,
did.
I think you were doing yours first. So every Friday on LinkedIn, I'm going to be doing a live. This Friday is going to be at 1 o'clock. This Friday we're going to talk about the itch to snitch, and that is like, when is it okay to throw a colleague under the bus or your boss under the bus? So we're going to talk about that. And then, of course, I also have a podcast now called Cubicle Confidential, where we answer listeners' questions about their workplace quagmires.
There you go. And you have a co-host for that, yes?
I have a co-host, this great colleague of mine named Chris DeSantis, who is super funny and super smart. And I'm just there for color, for humor. But I have one more tip for managers, especially now as everyone looking at, like everyone's talking about the Great Resignation. But and I'm sure you guys have probably talked about this before, but doing a stay interview. So stay interviews, it's a great tool that Beverly Kay wrote about many years ago. And you know how many organizations do the exit interviews, which is great, except that by the time they're leaving, that information isn't that helpful to you anymore. It's helpful to HR for trends, but most of the time it goes nowhere. So instead, am I right? So managers should do stay interviews. And stay interviews are little conversations that you have with your team as individuals, 15, 20 minutes, and you ask them questions like, what keeps you here? What might lure you away? Are we using your talents well enough? What can we do more of, less of to engage you? And there's a whole list of questions that you can ask them. And that helps you understand and learn what's important to your employees. And I have a lot of people, lawyers mostly, who are like, oh, I can't ask my employees that. What if they want something I can't give them? And I said, great. Then you'll know. You'll know what they want, and then you can have a conversation about what's possible, what's not possible.
Exactly. And you know what? That I'm going to back up and say something about that. A bigger issue than that. There are, as leaders, so many of us are so afraid to ask the question that we don't already have the answer. I mean, to raise that issue that we don't have an answer to. People don't need our answer. They don't even always need to know that we can deliver what they want. What they need is our ear. What they need is our attention. They don't necessarily need an answer.
You are so right. Just the act of asking and deeply listening to people is all people sometimes need or want. It makes them feel valued, makes them feel heard, makes them feel seen. And when people feel valued, heard, and seen, they're going to be more engaged with you. And they're also going to probably be a little more tolerant of your difficult behaviors.
So there's another thing that was going on in the chat a few minutes ago, and that most people aren't going to have any clue what it was about, but I have to explain it, and sort of bring it out. And so there's a gentleman here named Tom Alway. He's a close friend of mine and has been for my entire life. And there are a few people here that know that every year we have what we call the farm party. And the farm party is what is now, I think last year we had 7 RVs. We served dinner to 125 and breakfast to 65 or something like that. And Tom says he wants you at the farm party because he wants to have a conversation with you around the fire. And Marissa said, I'm surprised he hasn't already invited her. So you're officially getting it. I don't know if you can handle it. I'm just saying. I
like farms. I like country. I like rustic. I love that. I like fires. I love it. I'm so flattered. A farm party will be really fun. Count me in.
Be careful what you ask for. And for that, I think Tom needs to get a book, because maybe Mary will and maybe Mary won't. Tom, you get the last copy that we have today, a signed copy of Managing Up. I know where you live. So Mary, I've got a couple other questions before we go. There's a ton of questions in the chat. And we could, Sophia's asking if I like green tractors. The folks here are starting to know me. Just saying. I'm going to scan through for one more, and then I'm going to ask you a couple of final questions.
Okay.
This is a good question. Bill asks, I'd be interested to know what the percentages of people who succeed with the grit approach and what the percentages of people succeed with the leave approach.
Yeah. So I think it depends on whether you're talking about a difficult boss or a toxic boss. And, there hasn't been any really definitive studies on that, more anecdotal studies. I believe that if you grit with a difficult boss, if you try more than one thing, your chances of succeeding are pretty high. But if you're talking about a toxic boss, and we talked about that last year, so you can go back and look at that boss that's the screamer, the shouter, the narcissist, the gaslighter, the boss that leads or rules through intimidation, humiliation, degradation. I don't think the gritting is ever going to work. The gritting can help you survive, but you're never going to thrive. So I think it really depends on just how difficult the behavior is for you, and at what point is it damaging you? At what point are you spending more time gritting than actually learning in your career or thriving in your career or moving forward in your career? So I think it's really about understanding what your threshold is, and when the gritting becomes the whole deal and not just part of the deal. If gritting is the whole deal, I'd say it's not working. You need to move on.
That's really good stuff. That's really good stuff. We started this by saying sort of two parts of this conversation, right? Dealing with the difficult boss and making sure we aren't one. So I'm gonna ask you to whisper. You get the chance now to whisper in the ear to a bunch of people around the world about this, and I'll let you whisper to us as a team member, right? Dealing with the difficult boss, and then you can whisper in our ear as a leader, making sure we're not one. What are the two things, one in each, that you want us to know?
As a team member, that I want people to know about how not to be a difficult boss.
No, how to deal with. So versus how do we, as a team member, what's one thing maybe you haven't said that you want us to know or remember, a critical idea about dealing with the difficult boss number? That's first. Do that first.
I would say it's an opportunity to put some tools in your tool belt. If for no other reason, then you're going to learn really quickly what kind of behaviors don't work on other people when you're the leader. Don't ever give up the opportunity to learn something from that difficult boss, even if it's just even the only thing you learn is the boss that you don't want to be. So don't give up right away. See what you can learn from that. And the more kind of difficult personalities you learn how to navigate, the more difficult behaviors, that's only going to make you stronger as a leader. That's only going to build your toolbox of being able to influence people who are difficult.
You and I had a conversation. Thank you for that, for whispering in all of our ears. You and I had a conversation. It was very early in the pandemic. Like it was, in fact, we talked and you were in Florida flying home, like everything was shutting down. You remember that conversation?
I do remember that conversation.
And we've obviously talked since then a couple of times, and we run Virtual LeaderCon since then. But since then, like in the pandemic era, right? If you want to call it that, what's the biggest lesson? Wayne says that was whispering. The real question, everybody, is: can Mary actually whisper? That's a really good question. I can't. Here's the question. Since then, since you got home and got off that airplane and things started shutting down and we all learned how to spell COVID, what's the biggest lesson that that Mary's learned?
That old dogs like me can learn new tricks only if I allow my team to take the lead. So I think in during COVID, one of the big things I learned was relearned just how amazing people can be when you give them the opportunity to grow and shine. When you get out of the way as a leader and say, guys, we got to figure this out. I don't know what to do. People will step up. And that has been, for me, just an amazing experience. I mean, I always loved my team, but what they did during the pandemic was unbelievable. The way they stepped up, even from the most recent college graduate on my team to someone much, much more seasoned, they all stepped up and said, you know what? We're going to figure this out and we'll let you know when we do. And they did. And it was amazing. So that was I don't know how to quite maybe get out of the way as a leader sometimes was what I learned, because your people, if you've treated them well, they will take care of you.
How about all of you virtually give some love to Mary over there in the chat because it's well deserved. Mary, thanks for being here.
Oh my gosh.
Thanks.
I love you. I'm going to give Kevin my little heart. I love you. You guys, you have no idea how generous Kevin is with his contacts, with his referrals. Like, he is literally the most generous person I've ever met. And I've never met him.
Yeah, that's true. We're going to fix it. You're coming to the farm party. First Saturday in July. Just mark it on your calendar. We'll talk to you about it.
I love it. Can't wait.
Tom always is saying, if this really happens, it's unbelievable. So listen, I am so glad that you've been here. I know that you can see it's happening over there. And I want to thank you for your wisdom, for your energy, for your passion, for your clever way of using our language. And it's always a pleasure to be with you. And it's always a learning experience for me when I'm with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And thanks, everybody. Have a great, first day of fall. Happy fall.
Happy fall, everybody. So you all know where we're heading next. If you just are joining us, if you've been on one of the social channels, go to virtualleadercon.com. There's more of this from other people the rest of the day, the rest of the week. You can join us there. For those of you that are already here in Crowdcast, Camilla's question is getting answered there. If you're already here in Crowdcast, you can scroll down, click the next button to join us. I'm going to leave. Mary's going to leave. I'm going to join you in the next session. Marcia Acker and I are going to join you in about 1.5 minutes. See you, Mary.
Bye.